All right, I'll toss it over to you, Jillian. Thanks for being here.
All right. Jennifer, do you think we have a minute for everyone to introduce themselves real quick so we know who's here?
Sure.
So if everyone wouldn't mind, either introduce yourself in the chat, or if we can quick just say your name and where you're from, and then appoint the next person to talk, just so that we all know who's here. It would be helpful. So since we're a small group. So I'm Jillian Finkel. I am the Director of Special Projects with GrowSmart, Rhode Island, and I'll pass it to Dominic.
Hi, I'm Dominic Leonardo. I am a planner for the City of East Providence, and I'll pass it off to Jeanette.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Wessel. I'm Assistant Professor at Roger Williams University, and I'll pass it to Kim.
Good morning. I'm Kimberly Parsons Whitaker. I am your neighbor to the west. I am the interim CEO of Connecticut Main Street Center, and I'm not sure who I'm passing it to. Back to you, Jillian.
Sure, Toonie.
Hi, everyone. Toonie Shartner, Rhode Island's economic gardener. I am a passionate community builder and run a consulting practice that helps businesses in Rhode Island grow. And I will pass it to Jim. Oh, yep.
Hello. Oh, wrong Jim.
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Moran, Chief Economic Planner, the City of East Providence. Pleased to be here. Thank you. I pass it to Jim.
I am Jim Perez. I'm the Chairman of the Economic Development Commission in Westerly. And I will pass it to William.
Hi, thank you, Jim. I'm Bill Fazioli, the Director of Planning here in East Providence, and I will pass it to my colleague, Johanna.
Hi, I'm Johanna. I'm Senior Planner with the City of East Providence, and I will pass it to our newest colleague, Victor.
Thank you. My name is Victor Regino. I am a planner for the City of East Providence, here to help businesses grow. Thank you so much. I will pass it over to, let's do Adam Brunetti.
Hi, everyone. Adam Brunetti. I'm the chairman of Downtown Woonsocket Collaborative, and I will pass it to Paulette.
And I will be, in the near future, the new executive director of the Downtown Woonsocket Collaborative. Very exciting. And working right now with the governor and retiring from state service in a bit and trying a new adventure. So looking forward to joining and working with all of you.
That's great. Oh, Paulette, you have to pick someone.
I don't remember who has not gone. Patricia?
Yeah. Patricia's on mute. There we go.
Patricia, you're muted.
Sorry, you should know that by now. It's been 2 years. Tricia Sundolini, Greenwich Finance Director. I'm just on wanting to hear all about your interesting ideas for Main Street. Let's see. Krista?
Hi, everyone. I'm Krista Moravec. I'm a planner at Horsley Witten Group, and I work with a lot of cities and towns in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut.
How about Ray?
Ray doesn't have sound, but he's from Burrillville. How about Peter?
Hi, Peter Ruggiero. I'm a private practice attorney. I'm a town solicitor in several communities, and I'm always interested in planning subjects because I'm also an AICP member.
Great.
Great. I think Denise.
Denise DeFranco, Forster Town Council President. I'm from the town of Forster. Thank you.
And Hannah?
Hey, I'm Hannah, and I'm a part-time intern at the East Providence Planning Department and Waterfront Commission.
Great. All right. I think that was everyone. Thank you so much. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started.
And Jillian, while you're doing that, I failed to mention to folks that if you folks have questions as we go along, please feel free to put those in the chat. If they're clarifying questions, I'll interrupt and make sure that they get clarified. And if they're more discussion-based questions, we'll hold those for the end. Okay, thanks.
Great. Okay, so our presentation today is called Strengthening the Heart of the Community, Main Street and Downtown Revitalization in Rhode Island. And the speakers were the first group of us that you heard introduced. My name is Jillian Finkel from GrowSmart, Rhode Island. We have our friend and neighbor, Kimberly Parsons Whitaker from the Connecticut Main Street Center. She's their interim CEO. City of East Providence, represented by Dominic Leonardo, and Jeanette Wessel from, she's our assistant professor of architecture and the program director for urban and regional planning at Roger Williams University. So, so I wanted to preface the presentation by saying that GrowSmart Rhode Island is currently looking to establish a statewide Main Street coordinating program through the national organization Main Street America. And I did want to clarify that when we use the term Main Street, we very well might be referring to a street that is called Main Street, but we're really looking at Main Street as more of a catch-all phrase that would refer to any kind of traditional or historic commercial district, which could be a corridor, whether it's called Main Street or something else, Broad Street or Hope Street, but also refer to a downtown, or even in New England, we have, a lot of village squares and village centers. So any place that is one that is traditionally a center of commerce and community, we're kind of lumping that under kind of the concept of Main Street. So, and today we want to talk a little bit about why GrowSmart Rhode Island and the rest of us believe that these commercial districts are important to our investment and attention towards them, not only as places, but also in the people that love them and care about them and work towards maintaining and improving them. We want to talk about the Main Street approach, which is a trademarked revitalization strategy from the National Main Street Center that's been implemented across the country for over 40 years, and how it can help our small businesses and our communities to thrive. Show some examples of how these Main Street principles are already being successfully implemented in New England specifically, and also let you know how to get involved in our initiative. So in case anyone is not familiar with GrowSmart Rhode Island, we've been around for 24 years. Mission is to lead and engage Rhode Islanders in advancing neighborhood revitalization, environmental stewardship, and economic opportunity for all. And we recently did complete a new strategic plan where our focus on Main Street and downtown revitalization was really emphasized. And when I say smart growth, say, the organization was established in the 90s as kind of a alternative to sprawl and suburban sprawl, and really thinking about how do you grow your economy and encourage development, but do it in a way that is environmentally sustainable and also socially just. And so we talk about the 3 E's when we talk about smart growth. And so that is, 1, yes, the strong economy, but also overlapping with how do you maintain a healthy natural environment and think about climate change. And then the third circle overlapping being that one of social equity, and that if your development benefits only the few and not the many, then it's not smart. And so this element of equity is really embedded in the very nature of smart growth, and where it's where right in the middle where those things come together. And so our target areas really do focus on that concept of land use. So maintaining the fragile urban-rural balance that we have here in Rhode Island, focusing on transportation and infrastructure and how those are integrated, but also economic development, special emphasis on Main Street and downtown revitalization, and then the big picture, which is all of these things playing into our overall quality of place and other things actually that contribute to making this a fantastic place to live. And we do these things through capacity building training. We have an annual summit though, or every other year summit that will be coming up this year, building awareness, working on policy, advocacy, especially at the state level, doing research and analysis to support that advocacy, bringing in best practices, and actually serving as a convener and someone who helps to build collaboration among all of our different interests, where we actually do have a similar goal of making Rhode Island great place. So why are we focusing on Main Street? I wanted to start just by talking about why this is important to me, and how I kind of came to the realization of the importance of place. And I did spend quite a few years living outside Washington, D.C. And if anyone has spent time in the greater region of Washington, D.C., you'll see it is actually quite an efficient and sort of beautiful place in that, buildings are new and well maintained. There's transit, people live right near transit. So it seems great, but after a while it kind of felt, it didn't feel right. And I couldn't tell why. It was because it was placeless. It was, areas that all looked the same. They were, new, they had no history and no unique identity. It was all the same, chain restaurants and stores. And when my first child was born, kind of looked around and said, this isn't the kind of place I want to live, and made a list of what I wanted in a place, and found Rhode Island checked all those boxes. And I'll say that top of that list was identity. Was a unique place where I could feel, where it felt special and I felt connected. And certainly that has come true in every way and every day. So I put up a picture here of Patuxent Village, because that is about a mile from where I live, and it is what I consider to be my place, my Main Street. And I bring people there when they're there from out of town. And I really do, I feel part of not only the place, but also the community and the people that here I want to engage, and feels like I'm connected to something that is bigger than myself. And I really do feel that that is a human need that is also good for individual and collective well-being, which I think right now is especially important as we're recovering from COVID, and also starting to think about how to really heal some of the division in our society. So that's kind of the underlying why, but there are many more practical reasons for perhaps doing this work. And the Main Street movement itself was established in the early 80s as one primarily of historic preservation. It was when the shopping malls were driving, hollowing out the downtowns and the main streets, and as retail activity was moving to the shopping mall. And it was an effort to preserve the buildings and the local character of the places, but also as a means of supporting our local businesses. And the reason that is so important is because economically speaking, when you're spending your money at a establishment who is a corporation with a headquarters somewhere else, the money in the local economy is flowing out. More so. And when you have a local small business and the money is circulating within your community, it is building and keeping that community wealth. And that's especially important, I think, for Rhode Island being such a small place where we not only need to keep as much of our wealth circulating in our own economy as we can, but we also need to bring in outside wealth and investment as well. So these main streets are really incubators for entrepreneurs. It's if you look around and where you see immigrant businesses pop up, it's almost often along Main Street corridors, and provides these opportunities for unique and diverse businesses. And these places that have these interesting businesses that are also walkable and human scale, they're desirable places to live, and desirable places for tourists to visit. And companies want to locate in places where people want to be. And so as a state, it is in our best interest to make investments in our main streets and downtowns, and as a broader economic development strategy. So as municipalities, what's in it for you? Obviously, we want more businesses. We want those businesses to provide more jobs. This activity can lead to increase in taxes, which allows us to provide more services to our residents. Also bring in outside investment, as I said, can be when that investment is in the physical structures, can really lead to increased property values. You bring in redevelopment, increasing, as I said, the desirability of your place. And when more people are around, naturally leads to a safer environment. There's more eyes on the street, especially when you're talking about a mixed use district where people may live, work, shop, eat. It means that there's activity at all times of the day. And as I said, this leads to connected community and an overall quality of life. So also, practically speaking, makes environmental and economic sense to concentrate your development activity in these dense walkable areas that can your transit. So you have less driving, less development of open space. And these Main Street and downtown corridors are really built and designed originally as public places for people to come and gather. So it makes sense to use them in that way and help them act and serve that need to the best of their ability. And I say these great places don't happen by accident. So I think that it can occasionally be a result of market forces that alone that may result in a place like this. But I think that's lucky, and that more often, if this is your goal, like anything else, you work towards it intentionally. And that is how a Main Street program could help attain these goals. So there is a comprehensive approach developed by the National Main Street Center. It is trademarked. It is called the 4 Points Approach. It's actually makes a lot of common sense, really outlining these are the 4 elements that go into building a great place. These, as you can see, 4 points being promotion, design, economic vitality, and organization. So promotion is probably what most people think of when they think of a local Main Street program. You're talking about your website. Perhaps it's a brand identity. It is events to drive people downtown, and really the communications piece of it. Design refers to anything physical to do with the place. So this is where buildings play in, but more than just the buildings, you're talking about things like sidewalks and landscaping, perhaps street trees or planters, hanging flower baskets, but also things like benches and anything that makes it not only aesthetic, but also accessible. And so then economic vitality refers to the business side of these places, and investing in existing businesses, bringing in new businesses, and filling empty storefronts. And the organization piece refers to how people are organized to get the work done. And that may mean staff, it may be different organizations working together. Perhaps there is an actual official local Main Street program that in your community that takes on this work. As I said, could be volunteers, could be partnerships. It's that people part of it. And what GrowSmart Rhode Island is proposing to do is to serve as the statewide coordinating program. So under Main Street America, there are all of your local groups. And in fact, there are, I think that maybe I said 1,600 local Main Street programs across the country. And there are 46 of these coordinating programs. Many of them are statewide, but a few of them are regional. So for example, in Massachusetts, they don't have a statewide coordinating Main Street program, but they do have one for the greater Boston region. And Connecticut is a good example of a statewide Main Street program. So we're proposing to do this statewide in Rhode Island, really support the great work that is already being done at our local level. You know, there are probably a lot of work being done in the municipalities themselves, also in groups such as merchants associations, neighborhood associations, historic preservation groups. There are some friends of different places. There's a lot of different ways that Rhode Islanders are organized, but what we felt is that there was no central organized network of all of these people. And so, and without an organized program, Rhode Island is leaving a lot of opportunity and money on the table. So, so if we want to step up and we want to serve as manager of this network, and what we would do is help bring in tools, resources, training, technical assistance, advocacy, being the voice of these places, offering networking opportunities, providing a way to communicate efficiently, seeking grants collectively and jointly, maybe coordinating joint marketing with other entities. We have a list of the activities we would like to accomplish as part of a proposal that is available at the state ARPA, state legislature's ARPA portal, and it's also available at the GrowSmart Rhode Island website if you'd like to take a look at that. And really bringing people in through their connection to their place is also a way to get some of this other work accomplished, and building that network of people to support things like more housing, increased effective and accessible transit, climate resiliency, equity, and other topics. So so with that, I'm going to pass it off to my co-presenters to talk about more specific examples. And I'll just, as a means of transition, say that when I started talking about this idea last summer, I reached out to Jeanette, and she just happened to be looking for a project for an upcoming class she was teaching. And, you know, we were both thinking like, what community might be, you know, a really great case study for the students to research and work on, you know, revitalization plan that would, could use the Main Street approach. And we both thought of Riverside immediately. It's a community in East Providence, right along the river. I used to live there when I first moved to Rhode Island, and drive through it every day saying, wow, you know, if this place could only have a little bit more attention, you can see how it really had all of that there to make it function in such a great Main Street location. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it on to Jeanette.
Okay. Welcome. Hi, everyone. I do want to just start by mentioning that I do have to depart at about 10:50. So if I miss question and answer, I'll leave you with my email address to follow up with anything. But so yes, thank you, Jillian, for that introduction. And I'm going to talk to you about some work that we did over the fall semester of 2021, working with East Providence and looking at the community of Riverside in terms of Main Street approach. We began this collaboration in the summer of 2021, and the collaboration is really a partnership with GrowSmart Rhode Island, City of East Providence planners, and two professors, myself and Dr. Elaine Stiles at Roger Williams University, but also Riverside community organizations and residents have been really active and involved in this. So the project was really setting out at the beginning to support a couple existing planning initiatives. One, supporting this GrowSmart's Main Street initiative, really thinking about Riverside as illustrating the potential of what Main Street revitalization can be, and how this might be an interesting way to think about other towns and villages across Rhode Island, using this as a nice example or a pilot study. And then second, East Providence was in the process of developing their mixed use overlay district for this specific area, which is intended to really enhance that business diversity and residential opportunity in the area. So it was a nice alignment of interest and needs that we were working towards. So the people involved in this work, I should highlight, certainly the students were really a great group of two classes working on this project. One class was a planning workshop course where the students are studying this as a revitalization effort by assessing the economic, the social, the physical conditions of the community. They're also identifying where the assets are, where the challenges are, and then eventually developing policy and design recommendations to move forward with. The other course was a documentation research methods course in our preservation program. And those students focused in on a cultural resource survey of Riverside Square to find historically, architecturally, or culturally significant sites as a basis for further rehabilitation. So those were the two aims of the courses and students that were engaged in this work. The approach of the course was framed around the Main Street Center's 4-point approach that Jillian had mentioned and introduced us to. So I won't go into detail, but I will just preface that that was really a guiding framework for the different topics and points of investigation that the students engaged with. Trying to find my cursor there. Okay, so Riverside, as Jillian mentioned, located in East Providence, it's part of Providence County in Rhode Island, has a very convenient proximity to Providence. It has a lot of coastal assets that have shaped its growth historically. The Riverside Square itself marks the Riverside neighborhood downtown, really via the intersection of Bullocks Point Avenue and the East Bay Bike Path, which was a former rail line running through the community. The square has local eateries, it has shops, it has churches, historic buildings, and it really serves as a connection point to waterfront access to the south and to the west for both residents and visitors who come to Riverside. And while the square is has its own unique qualities and assets, it has a lot of unrealized potential here. And by that, I mean, it has vacant storefronts that we can think of as opportunities. It has a good walkability with the bike path connected there. The bike path itself brings in visitors from Providence or from Barrington and Warren. It has a relatively low cost compared to other communities around it in terms of affordability. And there's also a number of housing projects under development here, particularly one, the Vamco former jewelry factory site is going to have a number of units developed there. So we're seeing a little increase in housing, and housing that is not just single family, which is exciting to see more growth of the population here. The actual site and location we're talking about, so you can see there on the right, we have the image, the red line indicates Riverside Square itself, which has about 33 parcels, 28 buildings in the commercial area. It also has about 22 ground floor businesses. So that was the main focus of the study, but a lot of the data collection also works with Riverside neighborhood as itself, which is defined by the 20915 zip code. It's also defined by 3 census tracts, 106, 107.01, and 107.2. And the choice of choosing these census tracts really mirrors past reports that have also collected data in this geographic center. So we both analyze the square, but many times the data is also representing Riverside neighborhood in itself. So the process that we underwent in this semester was first understanding the research and assessing what's there on the ground in terms of its existing conditions, looking at the stakeholders, the infrastructure, the physical conditions. From that data collection, which much of it is manual because a lot of it doesn't exist, but also much of it is provided via Esri's suite of data collection, which relies on the American Community Survey to a large extent. We collected the data and then brought that data to the community, hosting an open house event in November. In an image there that you can see happening at the Congregational Church there downtown Riverside. We had about 100 attendees, an impressive turnout certainly, where the students were displaying the data to them, but then also collecting the residents' feedback and input on how they imagine the future of their community growing. So it was a really informative experience, and an important part of this process is to really engage that resident into the conversation. And then after the data collection, both statistically on the ground and through the community's feedback, they synthesize all of that data and build out some recommendations in different capacities. The project really does started with a precedent analysis, and the importance there is really thinking about local, regional, national examples of these Main Street programs and what made them so successful. And it certainly is a diversity here. There's some that really have, many of them emphasize the organizational structure that GrowSmart is really propelling forward as an important part of this, that you need a group, you need a committee, you need an association to really help guide this process. But some of the precedents were very, very pointed in focusing in on housing as their primary issue, or historic preservation as the primary focus. So it is diverse across, but there's a lot of good lessons that the students and myself really captured from looking at these. And those will be in the report that will be finished up this week, excitingly. And you're seeing pages of the report that I'm presenting here. The documents that they had to work with, it's important to note that they aren't just coming in this without any background knowledge. They are focusing in on the key documents that the city does use currently, which would be the comprehensive plan, which I believe is going through an update currently. Another very valuable document that was produced in 2017 was the Riverside Square Market Analysis. And so this served as a good guide to thinking about what data to focus in on, what dynamics to kind of unpack more closely. I would say that this report is still very, very relevant, happening in just 2017 in a community that probably hasn't seen extensive change or change over time. So I would say a lot of the points in that document are very key. There is also the mixed use overlay district ordinance that the students studied and understood as background information. There was quite a few historical documents. One up there, the statewide preservation report from 1976 was a key element for the preservation students. And then certainly looking at the waterfront special development district, understanding the process of planning there. What does that program value? How might those values translate into Riverside? So a lot of background, good documents to work with to help guide them. I'll highlight the different foci or areas of focus that each team was kind of grouped within. We really wanted to focus on the social dimension, the stakeholders here, understanding what if there's social capital in this community, how willing is this community to pitch in, to volunteer, to participate in these efforts of Main Street, but then also pairing that with housing questions. What's the existing stock like? Where could we find improvement to diversify that housing stock? Preservation was a major component, and that actually combined 2 courses of work there, but also understanding the regulatory environment that's guiding and structuring this in ways that we can amplify and take advantage of the assets out there. Economic development certainly was a capacity where we're looking at employment, but also the retail sector, transportation and circulation, understanding how to get people to this area, where they travel to and from, places of traffic, the asset of the bike path and its value across the neighborhood. And then streetscapes and public amenities, looking at the physical conditions of the streets, the curbs, the sidewalks, what quality do we have at this condition? And do we need to think about improving those to make a more pedestrian friendly space? So a lot of different groups and topics that we investigated there. So I'll break this down. I won't spend too much. It's very hard to synthesize a very extensive research on this, but I'll do my best to kind of give you the nuts and bolts here of what some of the findings are in this work. So the first area, looking at people in social capital, we have a population of about 13,000 people in Riverside. The average household size is about 2.3 people, and the large portion of the population is between ages 55 and 70, so a little bit of an older demographic. There's about 700 more females than there are males in this community, and it actually has a low diversity index, a pretty homogeneous demographic in terms of ethnicity and race. So a low diversity index, median household income is roughly about $71,000. So that's the general demographic to situate you. If we're thinking about housing here, we have about 5,680 housing units in these census tracts. We have about 66% of them are owner occupied, about 27% renter, and about 6 of them vacant. The median home value, about $246,000. We have about 1,700 householders that are over 65 years old. So again, kind of reflecting that older demographic. And many of the homes are built prior to 1940 or earlier. So an older housing stock as well. So that gives you a little bit of the context there of thinking about these social and questions. The students also went through an extensive interview process with community groups, asking them how they envision their community in the future, what interests them, their priorities. And there's a lot more than I can talk about now, but general things that you would assume. Concerns about rising property taxes certainly came up, but there was overall a general optimism about the future and about what could be done here. And a keen sense of participation is there as long as we reach out to find it. So a really energized community. These students came together at the end of this group and proposed some recommendations, really thinking forward about, how do we amplify and engage more locally owned businesses? Locally owned was a high priority among the residents. How do we expand the housing stock beyond just single family? Think of medium, high density, also different diversity of types of the housing stock. There was a note that there was many young families kind of coming into this community for its affordability during the pandemic. And so how do we start to accommodate child-friendly kinds of living is another question. So generally, there's some takeaways there with thinking about density of housing, thinking about the conditions of what the community wants to see. I'm going to shift now into a bit of the preservation. And again, there's so much to unpack here. I'm trying my best to synthesize. With preservation, the students completed a Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Commission property data form for all of the commercial, civic, and institutional buildings in the square. A really extensive element here. It's a wonderful piece in the report, but they identified 8 properties that appear eligible for the National Register of Historic Places under specific criterion. The most prominent one being the train depot, which is right there in the heart of it now, Borealis Cafe, as the first one that could really be nominated into this. They also recommend that that Riverside Square itself become a historic district under criterion A for its association with broad trends that influence the development of the square. These could include things like the railroad, the light rail system in East Providence, the development of seaside resorts, entertainment, seasonal use, the development of commercial district to serve the growing residential streetcar suburb neighborhoods at the square, the growth of religious and civic neighborhood institutions. This period of significance for this nomination of it as a district would be from about 1860 when Riverside Depot was constructed to about 1970 when the most recent religious buildings were constructed for longstanding congregations. So there is a lot of great potential here if we think about what those nominations might bring in terms of funding and support as well. So that was a nice extensive piece that they looked into. There's also a wonderful local great examples of thinking about neighborhood preservation in the residential stock. There is a community member who renovated her bungalow, removed the vinyl, rehabilitated the porch to the original millwork, and then found that her neighbors started doing the same thing. So it takes a lot of this kind of on the ground local reinforcement to think about the potential if we're looking at the housing stock of being rehabilitated, which much of it is covered in vinyl. So that has a lot of great potential too when we think about preservation. And as you can see there with the slide, there's a number of other categories here that I could talk about that they have really propelled forward. But I think in terms of recommendations, this group was really focused in on nominating the train depot to the National Register, looking at also how to, let me find my paper here. I've got so many pieces. Also, looking at how to make the feasibility of ordinances and policies to support funding of housing and setting the stage for preservation in the housing stock, creating architectural guidelines focused on historic character of the community, getting the carousel operationalized and moving forward. So there's a lot of different things that they looked at here, and I sadly I can't do justice to the report, but I'll keep moving on. One last major category that I'll focus in on is economic development. And this team, as I mentioned, focused on employment as well as retail. And what they found here, there's about 248 businesses that employ about 2,100 people in Riverside. There's about 6,600 people employed with a job in Riverside out of that 13,000 population. So again, kind of reflecting that older demographic that doesn't work currently. Of that, about 6,600 people that have jobs, 5,000 of them work in Rhode Island, and about 1,000 of them work outside of Rhode Island. So there is a real strong response here to thinking about how they're commuting locally. Their commute time was only about 20 minutes on average to work. So you're finding that they do stay local, which is a really nice asset to think about this community. The main industries that they're being employed in are healthcare. You do have the East Bay Community Action Center there just to the north. Education is another area where many are employed, retail and manufacturing. And in terms of the business activity, the main businesses in the square, you can see in that bottom left image is a survey of all the existing businesses. They're predominantly personal services, which might be things like cleaning companies or a childcare or automotive or beauty, do kind of are the predominant types of businesses, as well as food and beverage. So Borealis Cafe, Union Burrito, there's other Rhodes Pizza, there's other food and beverages, another major business sector there. And interestingly, when you look at the annual lifestyle spending of the residents there in that community, it's a direct reflection of those services, as well as the food and beverage industry. Interestingly, a lot of them spend personal services is where they're spending a lot of their money, but they're also spending a lot of their money on beverages away from home, or alcohol away from home was a category. So this going out, eating out is also highly desired in another activity. Lower on the spectrum, we're visiting event venues or museums or entertainment venues, and that's largely because Riverside doesn't have a lot of those options for them. So thinking about where they're spending the money, what it also mirrors the kind of business stock that is located there. Through the discussions of, talking with the community and what can really help support that business growth, the students went through a vetted process of trying to identify all the financing tools at the federal, state, local levels to help support that work. And then really put forward some proposals of thinking about incorporating places that are boutiques, small scale, locally owned, yoga, specialty stores, bookstores, game stores, things that really respond, child-friendly places that respond to the needs of what they would like to see there and what they would enjoy. And food, more diverse food choices, certainly. With the businesses as well, they also latched onto this concept of micro mixing, where you can get two businesses really sharing the same storefront or the same space to lower their overhead costs and allow these smaller scale kind of vendors to really get their feet up and running. And I think another challenge for them is, you need a flexible flexible landlord. You need a flexible developer who's going to be flexible in the rental process in those beginning months of their business. So there has to be kind of an alignment really with how the developer wants to support that business and the business's a stage of growth at that particular time. So just to wrap up here, I know I don't want to take too much time. Transportation circulation it goes all hand in hand. You can't talk about any of these topics without a relationship to the other. And the bike path is such a valuable asset here. The students had found ways that they can begin to connect it more strongly to the park system, the Sabin Point Park and the carousel, finding neighborhood routes that you might start to think about expanding the bike path beyond where it is, and really connecting, getting people walking in the environment. And then finally, the streetscapes, public amenities did a vetted look at the conditions of the community, can identify blocks and streets that need repair, that need some upgrades, and thinking about road diets, how do we bring down the size of some of these vast Bullocks Point Avenue, thinking about engaging the businesses out in the parking spaces, how do we, there's a good stock of parking in the area, how might we give some of that back to the pedestrian, proposing art, murals, there's a whole slew of ideas that they have for thinking about the streetscape design to really enhance it. So I think there's a lot to go from here. Where we're headed next is the report is wrapping up this week with the project group who will review it, and then the City of East Providence will have at the liberty to distribute it as they like. But I think it's got a lot of potential to really launch us forward to say, what does this community need? What does it have? Where is it heading in terms of this Main Street approach? So my contact info is gwessel@rw.edu. And again, thank you so much for the time, and apologies for taking so much time to talk, but I'm going to now pass it back to Jillian, I believe, who's going to pass it on to Kim or Dom.
Dominic will be next. If you can
stop share. There we go.
Stop share. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeanette. I know you have to skedaddle, but happy to pass on any questions anyone has, or pass on your report to anyone who's interested once. Next, going to hear from the City of East Providence, their approach to Main Streets and their connection to the project Jeanette just described.
Thanks, Jillian. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dominic Leonardo, and I'm a planner for the City of East Providence. Pictured here is a ribbon cutting ceremony for a small business that opened up on Taunton Avenue in East Providence earlier this fall. Today, I'm going to discuss the rationale for why East Providence is focusing on Main Streets, some of the Main Street overlay districts, the zoning that the City of East Providence recently implemented, some of the resulting housing development and mixed-use development we're seeing on our Main Streets, and then the next steps on how we can improve the Main Street experience in East Providence. Here I pulled a quote from our zoning ordinance, that mixed-use overlay zoning ordinance, which states really the purpose of why we adopted it, which is to encourage new opportunities for mixed land uses in Main Street and in neighborhood center configurations. I threw together some photos of some of the small businesses located on our Main Streets and some of the residential and mixed-use developments. So there's different housing, nutrition business, coffee shop, Centeca candle making facility, and a lot going on Taunton, Water, and Warren Avenue in East Providence. So why is East Providence focusing on Main Streets? First of all, a lot of the Main Streets in East Providence are that older commercial corridors. As a result, they have some vacant buildings and there are some vacant parcels. Whenever a housing developer or a small business sees these buildings or some of the parcels, they'll reach out to planning and they'll describe their use and really try to see how they can get into these parcels or get into these buildings. But oftentimes they're going to need zoning relief because the buildings are pre-existing non-conforming to the city zoning ordinance, which was adopted in the 1960s. So a lot of these buildings were fit for older uses and are not really conducive to the current economic climate. Because of this, most of these businesses and developers are going to need zoning relief, which really increases the risk of the project. It increases the time of the project. Zoning boards only meet once a month. And especially for a small business, before you go to a zoning board, you're going to have to hire an attorney. You're going to have to provide a Class 1 survey. And there's a lot of upfront costs for zoning relief that isn't guaranteed, especially a use variance. That's a very high burden to meet. So as a result, City of East Providence looked at how can we improve our main streets to make things easier for small businesses, make things easier for development, especially high density and mixed use development. The city adopted the Main Street mixed use overlay districts on Warren Avenue, Taunton Avenue, Riverside Square, and on Waterman. Taunton Avenue, for people who aren't familiar with the City of East Providence, that's where City Hall is located. It's also Route 44. Warren Avenue in East Providence, that really leads you right into our city's waterfront district. It's also home to our city's arts and entertainment district. The Riverside Square area, that is what Jeanette just presented on, and includes Bullocks Point Avenue, which takes to the Crescent Park Carousel. So what does the East Providence Main Street Overlay District do? Primarily, it increases the number of by right uses, and this includes mixed use. It also allows for multifamily units by right. The city also encourages high density development. We also reduce the off-street parking requirements. Prior to the Main Street Overlay District, the 2 off-street parking spaces were required per residential unit. The Main Street Overlay District only requires 1 off-street parking space per residential unit. And then we also reduce the setbacks and reduce the height limits. This is all to encourage high density mixed use development along our older commercial corridors and our main streets. And it also really enables that infill development. So what I have pictured here on the right, this isn't on a main street, but it's the type of development that we're encouraging on our main streets. The developer of this parcel in Rumford, which took a 100% impervious parcel that had a vacant commercial building, improved it to 17 residential units that are fully rented out. They improved stormwater management, they improved landscaping, they improved public amenities like sidewalks, and they also are going to do a similar development on our main street on Waterman Avenue in East Providence. Some of the housing development that's occurring in East Providence as a result of this mixed use overlay district are the 16 units on Bullocks Point Ave, that's in Riverside Square. Those units are actually going to be affordable to low and very low income households. It's built right on street, so 0 setbacks, the parking's in the rear, and they utilized the new parking requirements, which is a 1-to-1 ratio, which really made that feasible for that location. Additionally, there's 25 units going up on Waterman Avenue. That's completed the development plan review process within the planning department, so we should see construction taking place soon. That also utilized the 1-to-1 parking ratio. That's about a 20,000 square foot parcel that's going to be able to have 25 units right on Waterman Avenue. Additionally, 13 units on the corner of Ivy and Taunton Avenue. That's what I have pictured here. We also have diversity in the housing unit. So there's going to be 9 townhouses right on Ivy Street, and those are going to be affordable to those households earning up to 80% of the median area income. On Taunton Avenue, this is directly across the street from City Hall. It's going to be a mixed-use building, which has 4 market rate units on the 2nd floor, and then 4 commercial units right on the 1st floor. So again, parking is going to be in the rear, and we're going to have that mixed-use development right on our Taunton Avenue, right on across from City Hall on our main street. So Jillian raised an interesting point earlier, kind of saying, why do we focus on main streets? And really, it's because from a municipal perspective, especially, this is extremely efficient because the city doesn't, there's no additional cost to the city here. These roads are already paved by the city. There's already existing water and sewer facilities, infrastructure for these developments. The lot is sitting there vacant. So now it's actually going to increase tax revenue to the city without providing additional costs. These roads were going to be plowed no matter what. And now they're actually going to be residences and businesses that are going to activate the street and really improve the quality of life in our main streets. Some of the mixed use projects we're seeing on our main streets, specifically on Taunton Ave, is a building that's 130 to 136 Taunton Avenue. It has 5 residential units on the 2nd floor, and then the 1st floor on the street is home to 3 commercial tenants. So we have Cafe Zara, they serve coffee, and it's a really walkable street now, Taunton Avenue, where you have high density residential neighborhood abutting Taunton Avenue. And we're seeing those people walk to these commercial buildings, supporting Cafe Zara, supporting the spa that's going to be going in right next to Cafe Zara. And then additionally, that Centtique is a candle making that really experience style retail. And that just opened up this fall right on Taunton Avenue. Another mixed-use development is what I just mentioned, the Ivy Place. We're going to have affordable housing, market rate housing, and commercial uses. And then at Bullocks Point Avenue in Riverside, pictured below, 275 Bullocks Point Avenue, 5 commercial units on the first floor, 4 residential units on the second floor. Again, this is all infill development. This isn't taking away any new green space area in the city. It's all on our existing roads, existing commercial areas already serviced by city infrastructure. So what are we doing next? What are the next steps for East Providence? First is to implement the findings of the Roger Williams study. We can't wait to have that final report. The planning department was able to attend a presentation from the graduate students at Roger Williams, and we really appreciated the community input they were able to receive in Riverside. As Jeanette mentioned, over 100 people came out in Riverside for that community meeting to discuss improvements Riverside residents would like to see in Riverside Square. Second, the city is working on a facade improvement program, looking to see how we can help small businesses and maybe leverage some of our ARPA funding to help improve facades, specifically on our Main Street corridors. And lastly, we're going to look to provide technical assistance. Victor Regino, who's on this call, he works directly with small businesses, helping them identify funding sources through the city, maybe our commercial loan program that we offer, or Commerce RI grants, or if they need help with revenue generation, marketing, advertising, we can connect them with the organizations that'll help their business thrive on our main streets. And I think we're going to take questions at the end, so I will kick it back to Jillian.
Thanks so much, Dominic. It's so exciting what's happening here in Rhode Island, but I have heard from a lot of people I've been talking to as we talk about our Main Street initiative that we also want to know what's happening in other places and what would be possible if we really, turned our attention to this topic. So that's why we're so excited to have with us Kimberly Parsons Whitaker, the CEO from the Connecticut Main Street Center. She's going to share with us some really exciting examples of how the Main Street approach has been successfully implemented in Connecticut.
Great. Thank you so much, Jillian. Thank you all for inviting me to be part of this. I think this is just this partnership with the City of East Providence and Roger Williams is just absolutely awesome. I'll have an example of something somewhat similar as far as like a university, college, and municipal partnership a little bit later in my presentation. Once again, I'm Kimberly Parsons Whitaker, the interim CEO of Connecticut Main Street Center. We have been around since 1995, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Basically, I've got 3 major areas of focus in the short time that I'm presenting here. A little bit about our organization, what we do, how we function as the state coordinating program in Connecticut. An application of the Main Street 4-point approach in a community. I have a specific case study of a startup Main Street program from the early 2000s and their action plan, and how we at Connecticut Main Street Center assisted this local community in creating this action plan. And then some examples from around Connecticut in various towns and cities with Main Streets, with downtown management organizations, how they've taken the knowledge of the Main Street approach to make their main streets more sustainable. So this looks like a lot of corporate logos, and it is, but it also helps to tell the story of how Connecticut Main Street Center started in 1995, because it is unusual in the country. Our state's largest utility, which is now known as Eversource, at that time it was known as the Connecticut Light and Power Company. CLNP started the Connecticut Main Street program. Back in 95, there was a very, very smart director of economic development within CLNP who saw that the state wasn't really interested in starting a statewide Main Street program. And he said, you know what, this is enlightened self-interest to the utility company, where we have dark storefronts, we're losing money as the utility company. So it's in our own best interest to make sure that our downtowns are vibrant. So kudos to him, and thank you very much. So they started the Connecticut Main Street program within CLNP's Economic Development Department with a staff person who was the program manager. 4 years later, they spun off Connecticut Main Street program into a nonprofit. So that takes us to late 1999. At that point, when we became a nonprofit organization, then we pulled in the state of Connecticut through our Department of Economic and Community Development. And that's when other funding partners were attracted, including Avangrid. At that time, it was United Illuminating down in the New Haven area, another major utility, and then our State Historic Preservation Office. So the four of those groups, those are our founding partners and growth partners. Since that time, in the late 90s, early 2000s, we've attracted a lot more sponsors and corporate partners, corporate investors. We've provided opportunities for these funders and these partners to increase their visibility and align their messages with our educational programming and the services that we provide to our communities. So Connecticut Main Street Center, we have recently completed a big strategic framework and are currently involved in updating our fiscal year 23 work plan, which will kick off on July 1. So we describe ourselves as the expert resource for developing and sustaining vibrant downtowns and main streets that fuel our state's economy, or fuel our state's prosperity, economy, but overall prosperity. Our mission is to assess, to educate, to convene, and to advocate to develop and grow our downtowns. In short, we help Connecticut create places where people want to live. We assist municipalities, downtown management organizations, small business owners, and property owners be more knowledgeable. We help communities understand how to bring about incremental and transformative economic development appropriate to their communities. And we highlight and guide developers toward investment opportunities in downtowns. Our network of communities in Connecticut includes main streets of all sizes, from our small village centers to traditional New England town centers, to our urban downtowns and mixed-use neighborhoods. And our network extends throughout the state, and it includes professionally managed downtowns and neighborhood districts, also municipal planning and economic development departments, and then 2 regional organizations representing the interests of many towns. So while we always say that in order to be sustainable, downtown must be managed, there are a number of different models in which to manage a downtown. There isn't just one way to do it. We believe this very, very strongly. So yes, we do have sort of the nationally sanctioned Main Street nonprofit organizational model, but we also have a number of different models throughout the state of Connecticut. And we have a professional affiliate membership program for industry professionals. We're up to around between 35 and 40 professional affiliates right now. And basically they belong to our organization in order to provide communities with access to specialized expertise in downtown revitalization. This graphic here is really important, and we developed this from our last strategic planning session with our board of directors. So we believe that vibrant and sustainable main streets are developed around these 6 components, these 6 bubbles: a unique sense of place, economic vitality, stewardship, which includes community engagement and policies that support appropriate growth, equitable places and inclusive practices, sustainable practices and protection of natural resources, and connectivity with a focus on multimodal transit. And within these 6 components are elements that are necessary, we believe, for a truly vibrant downtown that caters first to the needs of its citizens. And these elements are necessary in order to attract residents, visitors, businesses, and investors. So in short, Main Street retail, restaurants, and small businesses won't thrive without people living within walking distance. People won't stroll, shop, and dine without a sense of place, including clean, attractive, walkable, with interesting storefronts, interesting places that lead you from block to block. And the healthiest communities are those where the community is engaged in determining its future, those that are inclusive and welcoming, and where the environment is a priority and development is appropriate to the setting. So you've now seen this graphic a number of times in this presentation, which is good. This last graphic that I just showed you for us at Connecticut Main Street Center, this is the what. This is what's necessary in order to create a vibrant and sustainable downtown. This is our how. So this Main Street 4-point approach. And as you've heard, developed originally by a pilot program by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which is how the National Main Street program started. But what they discovered was that downtowns had lost their value in these 4 distinct areas: our economic value, our physical value, our social value, and our civic value. So this Main Street approach was developed to address the restoration of these values simultaneously. As I said, we truly believe that downtowns must be managed, but there are different models in which to do that. So now, how we work, how Connecticut Main Street Center works with a new downtown program. And this primarily is when a new Main Street program starts, so a dedicated downtown organization. And it's really, those of you that have been through strategic planning many times, you will recognize all of this because it's basic strategic planning for downtown. You start by understanding the conditions on the ground. So this can be done, these 2 steps, steps 1 and 2 can be done simultaneously. You understand your market. Jeanette referred to Esri data sets. Yes, you start with basic data. Know your numbers, know your demographics, know your psychographics, how people are behaving and where they're going, where the leakage is. Get a real handle on the numbers. And you need to articulate the community's vision for downtown. What does success look like? A good vision statement, and I'm going to have an example of one in just 1 minute, is more than just compelling text. It's more than just the words, more than the language. I describe a really good vision as it declares your intentions for downtown. Again, it's what success looks like. And this then can lead the way to any necessary planning and regulatory changes that need to happen in order to achieve that vision. So we start with the understanding the conditions on the ground and what your vision is. Then we lead the program, the new program, through a SWOT analysis. They're analyzing their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities and threats, which then informs their goals. So their startup strategic goals for the organization, and then projects that advance the goals and speak to your markets and your opportunities. And so I'm showing a real life example now because I think it's just more useful to see how this plays out. So this was Niantic Village in the early 2000s. And for those of you that don't know, Niantic Village, just sort of a little bit to the west of you, it's a coastal urban village in southeastern Connecticut in the town of East Lyme. It's on Long Island Sound. The Niantic Main Street program was started by a grassroots core of citizens, including small business owners, historical society volunteers, local residents who routinely volunteer for everything, that 20% that volunteer for everything. And some residents who had second homes in Niantic, but had recently moved there full time. So some realities about Niantic when this program started in the early 2000s. The year-round population was about 3,100, which doubles in the summer. Their business community in Niantic Village, primarily seasonal businesses and a seasonal business owner culture. They were okay with making money 3 to 4 months out of the year and being closed the rest of the year. That's great for them, not great for the economics of the community. At that point, the 1 mile long Niantic Bay Boardwalk was in the planning stages, fully constructed. Now a few times because a couple of hurricanes came through and destroyed it twice, I believe, but it's there now. A popular family-owned multi-screen movie theater in the center of downtown. And then, as I mentioned, recent new residents that had moved from other places with vibrant downtowns who saw the potential in Niantic Village and wanted to get involved, wanted to be part of it. And then in Niantic Village's case, and this is not at all unusual in the startup phases of this, a municipal staff that in some cases was very skeptical and very guarded about the motivations of this grassroots group. So What we then did once they were accepted into our program, we began to work with them. We did a focus group model of visioning with the board of Niantic Main Street and invited representatives to articulate their vision. I love this vision statement. Downtown Niantic, an inviting seaside village, easily accessible by car, foot, boat, and train. There's a cue right there. It's a wonderful place to live, work, and play, where residents and visitors gather for specialty shopping, creative entertainment and arts, gourmet dining, and water activities within a village that has recaptured its historic past. There's a load of stuff in there, real cues to what they saw as success in the future. It's very well written. It's evocative. It's specific to a unique place. And most importantly, it declared their intentions for downtown. It was quickly identified that zoning changes were going to be necessary in order to allow increased residential and mixed use, to allow outdoor dining, which wasn't allowed at the time, and a shared parking agreement behind the buildings with multiple property owners in the village center. So really, I love this vision statement. We bring it out a lot because it's an excellent example. Our next step was to lead them through a SWOT analysis. This is very extensive, and I'm just leaving this up. I'm not going through the SWOT analysis, not useful for our purposes today. But what their SWOT analysis did was articulate the need for clearer communications about the municipal regulatory and permitting processes. The fact that, as I mentioned, most businesses in the village were seasonal and were not part of the year-round economy. There was a negative image of the village, both internally and externally, as well as that strong group of citizens that saw opportunities and were motivated to work with partners to make improvements. So out of this SWOT analysis, with the knowledge gained from this, Niantic Main Street came to consensus on 3 major startup catalytic goals. So establishing Niantic Main Street, the organization, as the downtown management organization, the voice for downtown. Enhancing downtown's image and brand, both from a physical, visual aspect as well as marketing. And then address the seasonal and underperforming business culture to make it a year-round economy, thus strengthening the local economy. So then we help them walk through the development of their action plan. And that action plan, it's always necessary, especially at the beginning, that it be a balance of projects that are quick, inexpensive, highly visible, that capture the public's imagination and their enthusiasm, and those that are more complex and more expensive and require additional capacity and more long-term. I'll leave this one up for a second and just I'll point out a couple of things. The projects that are in blue, this is getting a handle on data, getting a handle on conditions on the ground, done in year 1, in the first few months of that first year. The projects in red required coordination with municipal departments, guidelines, streetscape, facade program, zoning issues. This was an opportunity to establish trust and long-term relationships with town staff. And then the projects in orange, in order to build that same trust and long-term relationships with small business owners, Niantic Main Street kicked off some of these projects that are in orange. So some examples from Connecticut. A few years ago, we were all obsessed with what millennials want. And taking nothing away from millennials, because I'm a mom of a millennial, but it turns out that lots of people in all stages of life want what Main Streets have to offer. Main Streets are, when they are successful, they are walkable, easily accessible, people of all abilities, complete streets, in other words. They are transit bountiful, mixed use, diverse communities that can address many issues at once. And these types of communities have been shown to weather economic downturns far better than single-use communities, creating a win-win for young people, boomers, and local economies. So a few examples here. Downtown New Britain. New Britain is known as the hardware city because of its history as a manufacturing center. It's home to a traditional small urban downtown with an adjoining neighborhood known as Little Poland. New Britain has the largest Polish population in the state of Connecticut. New Britain's downtown has benefited from both federal and state investment in the creation of CT Fast Track, and this is the state of Connecticut's first bus rapid transit system. And the terminus of that system is right in downtown New Britain. So the city itself has been leveraging that investment in infrastructure and positioning itself for private sector development, such as the redevelopment of the Raphael building in this photo. Raphael building is next door to City Hall, just a few steps from Fast Track Station, about 2-minute walk. The owner developer is Avner Krohn, has experience in New York City, and he's engaged in bringing New Britain's mixed-use buildings back to life. He's currently on his 7th mixed-use project in the city and has expanded projects to projects in other cities in the state. So on the 2nd and 3rd floors of this building, which Avner redeveloped, they're very high quality, highlight architectural elements in the interior of the building. On the ground floor, there is 14,000 square feet of retail space, which hosts 56 jobs and produces over $4.5 million in sales per year. Based on an economic impact calculator created for Connecticut Main Street Center, the conservative estimate of 16 new residential units in the heart of downtown, which is what we have in this building, translates to over $30,000 annually in local spending per household. So again, the economic impact of bringing these buildings back to life for residential and mixed use is very, very important. In downtown Manchester, Eastern Connecticut, between Hartford and Storrs, where University of Connecticut is, the town of Manchester's Downtown 2020 initiative was a 2-year program aimed at increasing vibrancy, economic opportunity, and accessibility in downtown through incentivizing private development and carrying out key public improvements. This initiative included a no-interest loan program that could be used to improve private properties on Main Street, tax relief for downtown property owners, and municipal investment in capital projects. And Dominic talked a few minutes ago about why downtown? Why should the public sector, why should the municipality be prioritizing and incentivizing downtown development? And his answers were excellent. I will add to that what the Downtown 2020 initiative in Manchester said in addressing that question is that downtown is the heart of the community. It does belong and should belong to everybody within the community. That in downtown Manchester, there are over 200 businesses right in that relatively small downtown and 1.5 million square feet of space with a high demand for walkability for places to eat and shop and be entertained. And then underscoring the importance of partnerships, I'll share this example of a university and Main Street partnership, which resulted in zoning that reflects the community's vision. So the impetus for this study was the loss of Delaney's, which was a beloved neighborhood restaurant, kind of that Cheers sort of place. It was lost to an accidental fire, after which it became apparent that a similar establishment could not be built under the current zoning ordinance in the city of New Haven. So the Yale Law School's Ludwig Center for Economic and Community Development Clinic and Westville Village Renaissance Alliance, which is the local Main Street program in this neighborhood in New Haven, began by engaging citizens to better understand the needs and the desires of the Westville Village community with respect to future economic development and land use planning. Bit of an orientation here. Westville is the western gateway to the city. When you arrive by car, you know you're not in the suburbs anymore. It changes dramatically at that point. Westville is home to New Haven's wealthiest and its poorest citizens. It's an amazing dichotomy in this one neighborhood in New Haven. Southern Connecticut State University is located in Westville, and Yale is 2 miles to the east in the downtown area. And there is a very vibrant arts community in Westville, a community of artisans and makers who live right in the village. So at the start of the study, several key themes emerged by bringing the community together, including concern about absentee and negligent landlords, traffic issues, a lack of pedestrian friendliness, safety, pedestrian safety as well, safety for bicyclists, safety for people in wheelchairs, for those pushing baby carriages. It is heavily trafficked with traffic that's going through at way too high a speed for main streets. There are some onerous parking requirements that inhibited appropriate development, a lack of adequate signage and wayfinding, a desire to create a much stronger link between Southern Connecticut State and the neighborhood of Westville, and improving the overall vitality of the business district in Westville, especially to support local businesses. So through this process, Westvillians identified their values, including greater density, a mix of housing types and commercial spaces to create a more walkable, accessible neighborhood, and also ensuring that building heights would allow views to majestic West Rock, which is a natural highlight within the village itself from many viewpoints. So adding density, but making sure that building heights were really were not impeding the views of West Rock. So led by faculty advisor Anika Singh Lamar, Yale Law students provided their services pro bono to the Westville Village Renaissance Alliance. Together, they worked with the New Haven City Plan Department to outline a new zoning code for Westville Village, encouraging the development of neglected or vacant buildings into small-scale commercial, residential, or mixed uses that fit within the existing community fabric. So the new Westville Village Zone has several important outcomes. What the Renaissance Alliance, the Main Street program, is using the code to focus business and investor recruitment efforts. And there's been a marked increase in developers exploring projects in Westville and the opening of several exciting businesses, all citing their confidence that growth was happening and being encouraged in Westville. And then finally, this example from Willimantic in Eastern Connecticut. This picture is from 1996. It was previously referred to as the Lonergan Building. It housed at various times a local radio station, the local office of the Hartford Courant, as well as the National Guard recruiting station in this picture. In 2006, a new owner purchased the building with the intent of redeveloping the space to create an attractive, inviting, traditional Main Street mixed-use space. And this is the design concept. 3 years later, 2009, construction is just finishing up. And shortly after this, the owner of the building secured a tenant, a young entrepreneur who was graduating from Eastern Connecticut State University just up the street. Andrew Goot is a restaurateur here in Connecticut. At that time, as a graduating student, he saw the potential of downtown Willimantic and determined that what everyone needed was that third place. That place to go that wasn't home, wasn't the office or school, but a social gathering place. And he opened Cafe Mantic as a small coffee shop in one of the ground floor spaces. 3 years later, Cafe Mantic was an anchor business in downtown. Andrew has expanded the hours, it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the menu, and hired a former executive chef of the Max Restaurant Group to create spectacular dishes. He has since programmed many activities at Cafe Mantic and redeveloped the land down the hill and behind the building to make an outdoor plaza, which hosts dining, movie nights, special events, live music, bow wow brunches that you can bring your dog to. It's really this vibrant place in Willimantic. In 2016, Andrew purchased the building outright and then opened a new business up the street at 750 Main, which was the location for A Movable Feast. That was the name of the business, a catering and special event place. Andrew is this young entrepreneur who understands that this is incremental work, starts with a vision and breaks down that vision into an action plan. And that's how he trains his staff as well. He goes every couple of years through a visioning session with his staff at the restaurant, which is just awesome. And he says he was inspired to do that by what he learned from the Main Street approach, which is just awesome to hear. I'm going to leave with this slide. A few years ago, Connecticut Main Street Center engaged a consultant to help us calculate the value embedded in our downtowns. The results were pretty staggering to us. We calculated that there's a collective 187 million square feet of vacant and underutilized space locked in Connecticut's downtowns. And we wanted to know what the potential impact would be if this space was fully developed appropriately for our unique main streets. We found that filling these spaces with housing, retail, dining, small businesses would generate $1 billion in annual tax revenue. This would also create 88,000 new housing units and 20,800 new ground floor businesses. And that all of this development would create over 200,000 new construction jobs and 215,000 new permanent jobs. And these numbers gave us great hope at the time. This is our reason for being, quite honestly. It means the health of a community, it means vibrancy and places to go and things to do, and it means jobs, it means prosperity for a state. And so Connecticut Main Street Center exists to help communities create these vibrant places. Here is my contact information. I'm happy to receive and respond to any questions you have. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Kim. I should say, I don't.
Oh, Jillian, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes. So what I wanted to say is that we've really been looking at the fabulous work that's being done in Connecticut as a model for what we could do here in Rhode Island. So so next steps, I know we're out of time. We wanted to entertain questions, but feel free to follow up with any of us to discuss questions, and I'm willing to stay on if anybody really would like to. But please check out GrowSmart Rhode Island website. There you can read the proposal that we are putting forward. Please check out Main Street America and also the Connecticut Main Street Center. They recently just actually completed a series of webinars that went into more detail on each of the 4 points. Really useful and so gracious for them to share them with us. So you can check those out. We're going to be holding an advisory roundtable session to collect more feedback from our municipalities around the state. That date will be announced soon. And if you want to be made aware of it, there is an email list sign up also on the GrowSmart Rhode Island website. So please sign up for that to make sure you hear about the advisory roundtable sessions and also future news. And then please do, if you're so inclined and want to see this happen in Rhode Island so that we can maximize the potential of our main streets and downtowns, please mention it to your leadership and your state representatives, because to do this would really represent an increase in capacity at GrowSmart Rhode Island and at the state that we would need funding to support. But luckily, there is federal funding available, and we just need to invest some of it. And I'll say that on average, if you look around the country, for every dollar of public funding that's invested in Main Street programming, it's an average of $30 return on investment, and some places over $70 return per dollar of investment. So so it really is, for a moderate, little amount of money, we could do a lot and really empower a lot of people to be doing a lot more things in a really organized way, and that would have a great impact. So so with that, I will stop and thank you everyone for coming. So
Yes, thanks everyone. If there are any questions, please feel free to unmute or pop something into the chat. We'll just take 1 minute to see if there's anybody here that has any questions. Oh, Toonie? Oh, Toonie was saying bye. All right, very good. Well, I thank you all for attending, and I thank Jillian and your group of presenters for introducing this idea to the Rhode Island League community. I will be sure that this information gets posted to our YouTube page, as well as we will circulate it to our mayors and managers list, so they have the link if they weren't able to attend today. All right. Well, thanks so much for attending, and we will talk to y'all again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Jillian.
much for
Thanks,
having
Jennifer.
us, Jennifer.